Hello and welcome back to the Flip Bama Flip podcast. I'm your host, Victoria, and it's regionals week. So we're going to talk all about regionals. And I am going to do something, admittedly, that would light Nick Saban's hair on fire. And that is, I'm going to talk about both the semifinals and the finals for regionals in one podcast. Now, do not take that to mean that I am underestimating our opponents or that I'm assuming that we're going to make it to regional finals. Mathematically, we have a good shot to do that, but I know better than to take any team for granted. And I'm sure that Coach Ashley has this team focused on one routine at a time, one skill at a time, one meet at a time. So I'm not worried about them. For me, it's actually more of a logistical issue. So semifinals are on Friday. They start this Friday, 3 p.m. Central Time. You can stream it on ESPN Plus, but then finals are on Easter Sunday, just 2 days later. And I have a long list of things that I need to bake and cook for this holiday weekend. And so I want to make sure that that doesn't interfere with my ability to get you the information we need about the teams that we might see. Also, if you remember from my intro video, I went to the University of Illinois for undergraduate, and we're in the Final Four. So I'm going to be an emotional wreck on Saturday, one way or the other, whether we win, whether we lose. And so probably not going to be in the best frame of mind, either because I'm so excited or I'm so devastated, one way or the other. So I wanted to make sure we got you the information that you needed so that you can watch the regionals with an understanding of who we are going up against. So in the regional semifinals on Friday, there is a play-in to every single regionals, but it doesn't affect us. Whoever wins the play-in will go into the other semifinals. So our semifinal is set, and that is Utah, Oregon State, and Denver, and then, of course, Alabama. So let's start with Oregon State. They're a team that we've actually seen before this season. They came to Tuscaloosa on January 30th, and they scored a 195.825. They are the 25th ranked team in the nation, and they have an NQS of 196.106. Now, Oregon State is a team that my brain is struggling a little bit to recalibrate because my brain got used to Oregon State with Jade Carey. And not only is Jade Carey a phenomenal gymnast, and she's two-time Olympian, individual gold medalist, team gold medalist, and she just performed at such a high level in college, but she also elevated everyone around her. I mean, I can't imagine being a gymnast and being in the gym with her day in and day out and getting to see what is her process. How does she approach a season? How does she, especially when the season starts to get long and it starts to get difficult, how does she push through? What is her approach and her process? You can't help but get better and elevate your own game when you're in the gym every day with somebody like a Jade Carey. Jade was also really consistent. I think I saw somewhere that she had something like 205 hit routines in her college career. And the bottom line is Jade doesn't miss. She does not miss routines, which is why I think when she had that misstep at the Olympics, everybody was so shocked because Jade just doesn't miss. And so I think Oregon State, no one ever expected them to fill her shoes. There was not going to be someone who was just going to step in and make up for all that lost production. And you see it in their rankings. So last year they were ranked 14th. This year they're 20th. And I think one of the more telling ones is also last year they were actually 6th. They were 6th in the nation on balance beam. This year they are 20th. So still really good. They're in the top 25 for everything except for vault, where they're ranked 30th. But last year, just everything was much more elevated, more consistent, and they were performing just better overall. But they're still a very capable team. So when they do have athletes that are capable of putting up high scores, and if they can put it all together, they're a team that can upset. Their all-arounder is Sophia Esposito, and she has a relative strength on floor. So when she hits the floor, you're definitely going to want to pay attention because she's doing some really great work there. Now, moving on to Denver. Denver's the 23rd ranked team. They have an NQS of 196.383. Now, Denver is one of those teams that you might not put in with, the kind of perennial gymnastics powerhouses like your Oklahomas Alabama's, UCLA, Florida, LSU, those teams when you think about college gymnastics. But they're a program that has reached nationals relatively recently. I believe in 2023, I think they might have made it to semifinals. And then I think in 2019, they made it to finals. But they are a program that this isn't new. They're not going to walk into the postseason kind of bright eyed and just happy to be there. They're a program that knows exactly what they need to do to get to nationals, and they have the capability to do it. They haven't always had the consistency and the depth to do it, but again, just like Oregon State, you can't count anyone out. Now, I do think both Oregon State and Denver would likely need some mistakes from the two other teams in that region for them to move on to the regional finals, but anything can happen. We've seen that in past years. LSU not making finals last year, Florida not making finals last year, Oklahoma not making finals 2 years ago. So we can't count anyone out or anybody in. So that is Denver in a nutshell. They do have two all-arounders. Madison Reidenbach, she's the 39th ranked all-arounder in the nation. And then Cecilia Cooley, she's the 33rd ranked all-arounder, but she has two relative strengths. She is the 18th ranked gymnast on floor exercise and the 23rd ranked gymnast on balance beam. So they do have some athletes that are capable of putting up some really high scores. They just need to find a way to put it all together in one meet if they want to move on. All right, moving on to Utah. So if you saw my podcast about NQS, you will understand that Utah is a bit of an enigma. We kind of don't know what to do with them because they're ranked 12th, but under the old system, they would have been ranked 8th because they would have been able to drop some of those lower scores. As I said in that video, they don't feel like a 12th ranked team to me. They feel much more like an 8 or a 9, maybe even a 7, depending on how they've been performing. But towards the end of the season, they've really started to put things together. And it just took them, they kind of reminded me a little bit of Alabama last year, where Alabama kept saying we just needed a longer runway to get going. I feel like Utah needed a longer runway, and we're just used to Utah being Utah. Kind of ironically, they're in the same position as Oregon State in that they also lost their Olympian. So Grace McCallum graduated last year, and she is also on staff now at Utah. So Grace is now coaching at her alma mater. Jade Carey's coaching at her alma mater. But those are really, again, big shoes to fill. Grace McCallum, honestly, was one of my favorite gymnasts just across the board. She did beautiful gymnastics. Of course, she was an Olympian as well. So, but she really embraced the execution aspect of college gymnastics and just got all those little details right. And so, again, really hard to fill those shoes. But Utah, 12th ranked team in the nation, they are 3rd in the nation on vault. They are a very, very good vaulting team. They are 9th on uneven bars, 9th on balance beam, and then 15th on floor. Their all-arounder, their kind of superstar, is Avery Neff. And Avery is a gymnast that I have endless respect for multiple reasons. First, she had a pretty significant injury last year. So she didn't break her ankles, but I kind of don't know how she didn't break her ankles. She ended up severely spraining both of them after having a very difficult landing during one of her floor exercises. She came back last season and performed way better than you would expect somebody who went through that kind of an injury. But she's come back this year like nothing ever happened. Like she really has had a great year. She is ranked 3rd in the all-around. So she is only behind Kaylin Chio and Jordan Childs. That's pretty good company to be in. So Avery Neff is really excelling. Vault is where she shines. She's 8th in the nation on vault, 12th on uneven bars, 11th on balance beam, and floor exercise, understandably, has given her a little bit of trouble. She's 42nd on floor. Another name to know is Ella Zerbies. And Ella is 29th in the all-around, but she has some relative strengths. So she's 14th on vault, 15th on uneven bars, and 11th on floor exercise. Balance beam has given her a bit of a headache. She doesn't always compete the all-around, but when you do see her, she's got the experience, she's got the skills. being at regionals, being at postseason, it's not going to really rattle her. So she's going to be a really good competitor for them as well. They do have some specialists to keep an eye out for. Cami Winger is ranked 20th on balance beam. Anna Padarariu, it took me a while to learn her last name, Padarariu, who is a transfer from UCLA, actually. She's 15th on uneven bars. And then Ashley Glenn, who is a personal favorite of mine, she just brings so much joy to all of her routine. She just always looks like she's having the time of her life out there. She is ranked 25th on vault. So we'll talk more about Utah, because if we take our regional and just do it by the numbers, you would expect Alabama and Utah to move on. Likewise, in the other semifinal, if we did it just by the numbers, which again, doesn't always happen, but we're going to assume that it's going to happen, then you're looking at UCLA and Minnesota moving on. So let's talk about Minnesota. They are the 13th ranked team, and they have an NQS of 196.812 or 842, excuse me. They're ranked 15th on vault, 17th on uneven bars, 12th on balance beam, and 14th on floor exercise. So you can tell this is a very consistent team. They're not a team that has one rotation that is a super strength and then another one that is a complete liability. They are pretty consistent across the board. And they are a team, yes, they do have Ariana Ostrom. She's 15th in the all-around nationally. She has a relative strength of vault, where she's 14th in the nation. She is, again, kind of their all-arounder. But this really is a team effort. And I think that's why you see such an even distribution of scores. They do have one specialist, Jordan Leiden, who is 20th on uneven bars. Minnesota is a team that if they're all clicking, they can really be the upsetter of this regional final, because they have scored a season high of 197.825. That, if you're scoring that in the postseason, that's going to be hard to beat. I mean, everybody else is going to have to really be on their A game. So Minnesota, even though kind of the four teams is the least likely to move on, if we're just looking at numbers, they've shown that they're fully capable of putting up a really high score that could potentially, depending on how the other teams do, get them into nationals, which would be, for them, that would be just absolutely amazing. Okay, UCLA, the team that jumped us to jump into fourth. And hopefully you see that it doesn't really matter, because we would have ended up in the same spot anyway. Fourth and fifth end up in the same regional. So whether we were fourth, whether we were fifth, we would have ended up in the Corvallis Regional in the same final. So not really a big deal. They are fourth. They have an NQS of 197.54. They're fourth in the nation on vault, fifth in the nation on uneven bars, fourth in the nation on balance beam, and eighth in the nation on floor. One of the reasons that UCLA is a little bit difficult to figure out is that in the beginning of the season, it was kind of like Jordan Childs and company. She was fantastic, fabulous, racking up tens, but she didn't have the supporting cast that she needed for the team to do really well. So they actually have 2 scores in the 196s. Over the course of the season, that supporting cast has come alive. And so now that she's getting support from other team members, they have also scored over a 198 twice. And one of those was the most recent meet, which was their Big Ten Conference champions. So they are really on an upswing. They're kind of hitting at the right time. And so obviously, Jordan Childs is the main name you need to know. She's second in the all-around nationally. She actually spent most of the season at number 1. It wasn't until Kaylin Chio just started cranking out tens meet after meet after meet, multiple tens per meet, that she jumped Jordan Childs. Jordan spent most of the season at number 1 in the all-around, and Jordan has plenty of tens to her name this season as well. But Jordan is third on vault, fourth on uneven bars, fourth on balance beam, and she is first on floor exercise. That's where she's racked up most of her tens. But beyond Jordan Childs, Tiana Sumanasakra, who is ranked 18th in the all-around, another national team member, somebody who's used to performing under extreme pressure. She has a relative strength on balance beam. She is beautiful on balance beam. She makes it look like there is nothing easier in the world. And I mean, she just has this almost balletic quality to her on balance beam. It's just a beautiful thing to watch. She has had a little bit of an inconsistent season. She's a freshman. I think sometimes the gymnasts that come to college from elite, they have to get used to how do we do things in college. And one of the main things is we compete week after week after week. That's not something elite gymnasts do. They don't compete every weekend. And so just getting used to that mentally, getting used to that physically, getting used to the idea that it is about execution. It's not about just what is the most difficult skill that you can put to your feet, which is the emphasis on elite. And so I think there's some growing pains that happen when you come from elite. It's not as smooth a transition as you would think. And so she's had a bit of an inconsistent year, but when she hits, she is a 995 kind of gymnast, almost across the board. Ashley Sullivan is another gymnast. She doesn't compete the all around. She doesn't compete on beam. I think she competed once this year on beam. But she is very, very strong on the other three apparatuses, especially vault, where she is, or not vault, but floor exercise, where she is ranked 18th in the country. She had a little bit of a slower start to the season, but the last 5 meets that she's competed in, she has earned a 9.90 or higher. So she is just kind of hitting her stride again at the right time. Sienna Alipio is another specialist that you'll want to pay attention to. She is UCLA's beam queen. She's actually ranked 5th in the nation on beam. And during the regular season, she kind of did the beam equivalent of what Chloe did on bars at Alabama, where she did not score below a 9.90, not once during the regular season. Now, she had a disastrous beam routine at her conference championships and only scored a 9.050, but that's unusual for her. Her consistency on beam has been beautiful to see, and so we fully expect that she'll be able to hit her routines at nationals. Now, if we go again, just total chalk, you would expect UCLA and Alabama to move on. Again, the difficulty is that UCLA is hitting their stride, but also Utah is really hitting their stride at the right time. The other thing with Utah that we are up against is history. Utah is a team that has never, and when I say never, sometimes I have to explain this to my kids. I'm like, never means not a once. So not even a half a time. Utah has never not made it to nationals. So since 1982, every time nationals comes around, Utah is there. So there's a bit of that historical component as well. And what I don't know, because I don't know this Utah team inside and out, is whether or not that historical context becomes a motivation, or does it become pressure? Does it become we're one rotation in, we're two rotations in, and we're not in the top two, and now we get tight because there's so much pressure? Because honestly, who wants to be the first team in 40 some years? What is it, like 49 years, something like that? I don't know. Not a math major, but you don't want to be the first team since 1982 to not make it. And so to me, again, I could see it be a motivating factor, but I could also see it, especially if they start out and they're not hitting the way they want to. I could see that becoming something that makes them tight, because the pressure of that historical streak it's pretty weighty. So that's another thing about Utah. I hate, honestly, I'm going to be completely transparent. I hate that we're in Utah's regional, because whenever Alabama ends their season, which in the past couple of years has been at semifinals, Utah has been like my adopted team. I love them. I love their program. I do love the historical nature of their program and the fact that they've been, I mean, you want to talk about a dynasty. You've made it to nationals every year since 1982. I don't know what's more emblematic of a dynasty than that. But they also have an amazing fan base. Now, of course, I'm biased. I think Alabama has the best fan base. But if we're talking a close second, Utah is right there. They tailgate for gymnastics the way most teams tailgate for football. So that's all you need to know about Utah. But I will say this, I have gone to nationals. I always go to nationals, even if Alabama's in it. I go to the meets that they're not in, because it's amazing gymnastics, and I'm not going to pass up the chance to see it. But their fans are so gracious. They will cheer for good gymnastics. They don't really care who's doing it. They you can tell they know, they're knowledgeable about the sport. They love the sport, and they are appreciative of teams that do good gymnastics and athletes that do good gymnastics. So it's kind of hard to not kind of half cheer for them as well. So I hate that they're in our regional, and it's most likely going to be them or us. And obviously, I hope it's us. Alabama, really quickly, will be starting on vault, and I'll do a pod about what Alabama needs to do to move forward. I thought that was an interesting choice. I can see pros and I can see cons to that, but we'll discuss all of that in a future pod. And so please stay with us throughout the regional time, throughout semifinals, hopefully all the way to finals. There's going to be a lot of information that we're going to cover. So if you can, just like this video, subscribe to the channel. You will not miss anything. We will also be filling in just some general knowledge about gymnastics, knowledge about the upcoming and incoming freshmen after the season is over. There is a ton of information to give you, and I don't want you to miss any of it. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we will keep you posted on everything Alabama gymnastics. Until next time, roll Tide.